call to order the July 13th public hearing for the City of Tampa. Zachary Greco, Chair of the Commission. If you are here to present a project, you will have limited time to make your presentation, so we suggest being thorough but concise. When coming to the microphone, you will need to identify yourself and your relationship to the project. Commissioners will not ask any questions during your presentation. Your presentation should be presented in the following order: site plan, elevations, architectural details, and wall sections. Staff will then present the staff report. We will then ask for public comment. Following your presentation, the commissioners will be asking questions in the same order as the presentation. Please state and spell your name clearly if you're here to speak for or against a project. Your time will be limited to 3 minutes, so take some time now to summarize your comments because 3 minutes go by very quickly. Following public comment, the applicant will have 5 minutes for rebuttal. The public hearing is then closed. The only comments which will be allowed after the public hearing is closed will be in response to any questions from the commissioners. Commissioners will then discuss the case and will make their decision based on the City Ordinance, Chapter 27 of the City Zoning Code, the Design Guidelines, the Secretary of the Interior Standards, the Historic Preservation Development Review, HPDRC comments, and the testimony given at this public hearing. The ARC can only act on items that are within our specific jurisdictional responsibilities. Owners and agents are independently responsible to obtain any appropriate permits and/or approvals. If you haven't already done so, please silence all cell phones. At this point, I'll ask my commissioners, starting on my left, to introduce themselves.
Good evening. My name is Stephen Sutton. I'm an architect, and I hold the Architectural Historian Chair.
Shauna Boyd, Interior Designer.
Susan Klaus-Smith, Architect.
We also have here tonight staff: Ron Vila, Elaine Lunn, Beverly Jewisak, and Kamaria Pettis-Mackel.
Good afternoon. My name is Kamaria Pettis-Mackel from the City Attorney's Office. Can any of the board members please announce on the record whether or not there are any conflicts of interest for the items that are listed on the agenda?
Not I.
No.
Okay,
No.
thank you.
No.
Additionally, can any of the board members please announce on the record whether or not there's been any ex parte communications regarding any of the items that are listed on the agenda?
No.
No.
Not I.
All right, thank you so much.
Good evening, Commissioners. Ron Vila, I'm staff with Historic Preservation. Under continuations, none are reflected on tonight's agenda. So moving to the swear-in, everybody that wishes to testify, please stand up and raise your right hand. Ms. Juzak will swear us in. I do. And we could move to the first agenda item, which is ARC 20-105.
Okay. Good evening, Commissioners. This is Elaine Lund, staff for Historic Preservation. Our first case this evening is case ARC 20-105, located at 413 East Forest Avenue in the Tampa Heights Historic District. This application is on a vacant parcel. It is for construction of a new single-family residence with the site improvements that would accompany such development. The applicant is here tonight to make the presentation, but first I will move through our photo essay for you. Okay, so this is the green parcel is showing where the subject site is at 413 East Forest Avenue. Central Avenue is just to the east there. Michigan Avenue, which is now Columbus Drive, is just to the south, and you can see the U-shaped form of what is now the Tampa Heights Elementary School there at the corner of Morgan and Central. To the west, a few blocks is Florida Avenue, and you can see the red line on this map that indicates where the local historic district boundary is. And in case I didn't say it, this is the 1920s era Sanborn map of this portion of the historic district. Moving on to the next slide, This is a more modern aerial of the same area with the subject property outlined in green. You can see that it isn't vacant. To the east, again, we have Central Avenue, Columbus Drive to the south, and then this is Jefferson Street here, just to the west end of the block. And then the school property is down here on this south side of Columbus Drive. This is a look at the subject site. You could see on the sandbar map that there was a house there at that time. You can make out here that there was access to the parcel. You can also tell by the tree pattern there that there had been a house or something on the site at one time. So this is the property that is directly to the east, abutting the subject site. This is a non-contributing structure in the district. And then to the west, this one is considered contributing to the district. So if you're looking south at the site, this would be to your right. And then looking directly across the street, this is a contributing house in the historic district directly across the street on the north side of Forest Avenue. So that sort of gives you a feel for what the properties on this block are like. This is a view looking east along the street towards Central Avenue. And then this is a view looking west along the street toward Jefferson Street. You can see the house that's adjacent to the parcel here. The subject site's on your left, of course, and in the very far distance, just on the west side of Jefferson Street there, you can see one of the more recent new construction projects that's gone in this development, this little bungalow back there. So at this time, I would ask the applicant to come forward and begin his presentation. Thank you.
Good evening, Commission. Good evening, staff. My name is Edward Martin, and I'm here as a contractor representing this particular property. It's located at 413 East Forest Avenue. I'm going to start first with showing a 20-foot setback to the building line, consistent with the existing properties in the neighborhood. The side setbacks are 9 feet 2 inches to the west, 10 feet on the east side, and 32 in the rear. We've got a 9-foot wide driveway with 3-foot ribbons. And we've got a 5-foot 5-inch walkway, sidewalk with walkway directly from the sidewalk to the front entryway with 3-foot ribbons also. We also have a 5-foot extended apron, which is 5 feet on either side of the 9-foot driveway. The main floor elevation is approximately 24 inches from the existing grade. Which is consistent with the homes in this area also. The first floor is constructed of CMU and includes a concrete slab over a stem wall foundation. We've got brick veneer at the bottom of the stem wall and also in the columns front and back. The wall siding is of hardy lap siding, and the trims are also hardy 3-inch trims. We've got exposed rafters, which is consistent with a lot of the houses in the neighborhood. front, the front and entry, the front and rear entry doors are of single light French door type. The second floor framing is of 2x4 framing. The windows, of course, are cased with the hardy casing. The masonry part of the first floor is also covered with the hardy lamp siding and trimmed consistently with the second floor, which is all consistent with the homes in the neighborhood. That's it.
Does that complete your presentation? All right, thank you.
Sorry, Commissioners, I believe the applicant did bring some product samples to show to you, if you'd like to request that at this time.
Yeah, if you do have any sort of samples for the materials that you mentioned, now would be a good time to go through that and present those. Could you use the microphone? Thank you.
Got here some samples of the hardy trim, which is a 3/4 by 6 inch solid trim material. And then I've got the lap siding, which will show a 6-inch reveal. We also have, for the roofing, we have some dimensional shingles by Tamco Heritage. And this is the window. It's an impact-resistant window, vinyl by Jeld. And that's it. Oh, one more thing, I'm sorry. For the exterior lighting, we've got somewhat of an antique type light fixture that is pretty much consistent with the houses also in the neighborhood.
All right, thank you very much. At this point, staff will present the staff report.
Commissioner, staff found that this project is consistent with the design guidelines for the Tampa Heights Historic District. Given our unique circumstances here, there were a couple of items I just wanted to make sure that the applicant did review for us this evening. I know the applicant and I had at prior meetings discussed the front yard setback and the height from grade of the structure, and if we can just go to the overhead real quick. This being the contributing building that is directly adjacent to this property, we felt that it would be best to sort of match this one in its setback and elevation. So this is the reference that the applicant had to use. There are some other items that were in the staff report, and if possible, I would say if the commissioners have particular questions about any of them, then I would say that you request the applicant to discuss those with you at this time. I am not sure if I saw a window installation detail, so if that's available, I'd appreciate that being, I'd appreciate you going through that if possible. And that's all I have at this moment. I'm available if you have questions. Thank you.
Thank you very much. At this point, we will open the hearing to any public comment, either for or against. If there is anyone that would like to speak either for or against, please come up to one of the two podiums. Seeing and hearing none, we're going to move now to the portion where the commissioners can ask questions. Would any of the commissioners like to begin?
Sir, I'd like to make a brief discussion about your selection of doors and windows. You made note in your presentation of where you're originating the source for your window. Do you actually have a sample of that or a photograph of record for that as an item for review? And also, are the doors also from the same source? Because we've not yet seen anything respecting doors and hardware.
Yeah, the doors would be of Jeld also. I don't have a sample of the doors, and I don't have a picture of the doors either.
Thank you very much.
Could I look at your site plan, please, sir? Could we zoom into the site plan just a bit on the camera? Thank you. That's great. Is there intent to have a fence of any kind around the property or near the,
Yeah, if a fence is required, then we can put a fence.
well, no, I'm just asking the question,
No,
is there an intent?
No, there is no intent at
Okay.
this time.
How do you intend on screening the air conditioning unit from the street then?
Well, there wasn't much thought given to that, but I mean, we can build somewhat of a fence or something on this side, on the east side of the house.
Per the design guidelines for the district, there is some consideration that does need to be made for that, so that's something to think about. Another question I have is, you have a note there for 2-car parking spaces, but I don't see an extension of the concrete to accommodate a second car past the porte cochere. Can you speak to that? It appears that your lines are dashed or hidden lines, which would not indicate a hard surface.
Right here, there is an extension beyond the covered area.
And what's the materiality for that?
It's concrete also.
It will be concrete as well. Okay. And then I did have another one. Could I see your main front elevation, please? So I know my fellow commissioner asked about the front door. Is the door as it is drawn on the elevation, is that the intent for the door
That is the intent.
for the front door? Okay, thank you. That concludes my questions at this time.
Staff had a comment about raising the elevation from grade of the front porch. It does not appear, if you could bring back the front elevation of the house. That it has been raised.
Yes, it was.
Elaine, would you mind confirming?
So I guess one question that maybe can tag onto this is, did you go out and see the height of the building that was presented by staff to figure out what that setback was and that elevation, and do you have that
Yes,
information?
Yes, I did.
Okay. What was the setback in the elevation for that?
I believe the setback was approximately 20 feet.
Okay.
From the property line to the front of the building line.
Okay. And then the elevation for
It's
the,
approximately 24 inches.
okay.
There was also a request on the staff report for welcome walls flanking the front steps.
Could you repeat that?
There was a request in the staff report for welcome walls flanking the front steps leading up to the front porch. I agree that that is something that's consistent with the district, so I think that if those have not already been considered for addition,
That
they
would
might
not
need to
a
be.
problem.
And then, this might have been in your wall detail and I missed it, but is the 3-inch concrete cap over the foundation wall, has that been added as well?
Yes, it is.
I don't have any additional questions.
I have a question for staff. The image that you presented as kind of the example, do you have any information on either the height or the setback for that?
We did not have any information on this house on file, the one that was adjacent. You can see from the view on the overhead that, it does have some steps that were, likely placed on at a time after the house was originally constructed. Just from my guess here is that that house has an enclosed porch, and then this little bit of concrete porch here was probably added on at a later date. So it might not be, exactly accurate there as it was historically. However, that does appear to be like 3 and maybe a half little step at the bottom there on the way up to the porch. So it may be just at the height where the railing's required.
Okay. And then the only other question for the applicant is, I believe you went over most of the materials. What are you planning to use for your roof material, and then also where the overhang and exposed rafters are? I couldn't see it in the section, so I wasn't sure if you could kind of go through that real quick. Okay, so shingles.
The rafters are gonna be exposed. There's 6-inch exposed rafters. There's no soffit or fascia.
Are you going to be using beadboard or anything exposed kind of above the rafters, below the roofing?
It will have some beadboard above.
Okay, and is that called out in the section?
It's not called up in the section, but that can be added as well.
Okay. And then I think that's it for my questions. Are any other additional questions from any of the fellow commissioners? Okay. At this point, the applicant is allowed 5 minutes for a rebuttal. Okay, all right, thank you. At this point, we're going to be closing this portion of the public hearing, and the commissioners will now discuss the case, starting on my right.
I know there's been some discussion about the heights above grade. I find the 2 feet above grade to be consistent with design guidelines, so I have no issues with that elevation being utilized. Also, it seems that the front setback is consistent, considering there aren't a lot of conforming structures nearby, but with the existing condition immediately adjacent to this lot. The welcome walls, I'm kind of conflicted about that because of the style that has been selected and depicted. That isn't necessarily consistent with that style, and so not having seen any precedent from the client or the agent, that's probably the one thing I'm conflicted about. But other than that, I found it consistent. I do think there are a few things that need refinement. Obviously, the front door, I do have some issue with that because I feel it's not depicted in a meaningful way that really gives us a clear indication of what eventually will be placed there, as well as the hardware for that.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Commissioner Sutton?
I have no immediate comment, thank you.
I also have no comments.
Okay. Well, I have no comments as well. Would anyone like to make a motion?
I move to grant a certificate of appropriateness for the drawings and documents presented at this public hearing in ARC 20-105 for the property located at 413 East Forest Avenue, with the following conditions: that the front door and hardware specifications are approved by staff, that the beadboard / soffit material is added to the section, the AC unit is shielded from the street,
Mhm.
because based upon the finding of fact, the proposed project is consistent with the Tampa Heights design guidelines for the city of Tampa. For the following reasons: the scale, massing, and building form, as well as the setback and orientation, are consistent with the guidelines.
I second the motion.
And then before we vote, does the applicant understand the conditions that were presented? Do you have any questions for those, and do you approve of them?
Can you, I'm sorry, Kamaria Pettis-Mackel from the City Attorney's Office. Can you make sure that you turn the microphone on or go to that podium to just put it on the record?
Yes, sir. I do approve.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you. We had a second, so all in favor?
Aye.
Against? All right, motion passes. Thank you.
Good evening, Commissioners. Ron Vila, staff with Historic Preservation. Moving to the next case on the agenda is ARC 20-185. This is for the address of 909 South Bruce Street. This is in the Hyde Park Historic District. The primary structure is a contributing structure, which was constructed in 1925. The current zoning reflected on that parcel is RS50, and the request is for a certificate of appropriateness for an addition to that primary structure. Here's the vicinity map showing the property in question, shaded with a green. Does face Bruce. To the south you have Morrison. There is an alley that runs north and south behind the parcel. It is an unimproved alley at this time. The alley has no consequence in the request this evening. If you look at the primary structure, you see the roof line, and then you see a small addition of a screened-in area on the rear that will be removed as part of this request. This is looking at the Sanborn map. We use this as a point of reference as far as the setbacks go, as indicated on the previous case. Nothing is going to be changed to the front of the structure. The addition is towards the rear. It is a two-story addition to a one-story structure. This is the front facade of that colonial influence structure. Coming in a little tighter to the front, you see the door, the side lights, and the electrified lights that are there as well. Moving to the south elevation, which is here. They have a shared apron with the abutting property. This is the abutting property. Also of the same time frame. And to focus on the south elevation of the subject site. Currently, the subject site has aluminum siding on it. You see the series of windows as it goes down the side of the multi-pane over a single light. Moving to the north elevation. You see the fence that will remain, and then you see the chase for the AC in the background, and it's shielded from the primary street. This is a little tighter shot of that north elevation, and what I wanted to show here is how the siding comes down, and if the agent could talk about the termination of the siding and how it engages with the foundation. And staying on that north side of Bruce, this is the abutting structure. This is the multi-pane over single light windows. Some of the windows do have shutters. Moving to the rear. This is the primary structure, and then I spoke about the screened addition that you can see from above that will be removed. And just to conclude the photo presentation, a couple street shots so you get kind of an understanding of the setting. This is looking down Bruce. It runs north to south. This is looking to the north. And then as you turn around, looking down Bruce as it terminates into Morrison. At this time, I'll have the owner address the board. Thank you.
Good evening. My name is Peter Orbaugh. I'm actually the owner of this property. I purchased it about 15 months or so ago, and with the intention of expanding it slightly. The existing, or the subject property, is a nice little house. It's pretty much unadulterated in the form, from the form in which it was built in 1927, with the exception of some interior changes and the fact that probably in the 50s, somebody came along and put Alcoa siding and Alcoa window wraps and all that kind of thing around the original structure. So that's still intact today, for the most part. Part of this project will be removing that and restoring the siding to its original, the siding and the window surrounds to its original condition, which is the 2.5 inch, the siding is 2.5 inch Dolly Varden type siding, which is very common in that period of time. I just wanted to show the aerial view here, which Ron has already presented. My house is the one that has the push pin in it, and I just wanted to indicate 3 other houses on this street. Bruce Street isn't a very long street. I think there's only 13 houses on this street. It's just off of Morrison. And these particular 3 houses have done a modification and a rear addition very similar to the one that I'm going to be requesting now. The original site plan is here. It shows the existing structure with the small little deck with a shed roof on it, which will be removed, okay? The new site plan, and I apologize, when I copied this in here, it didn't really translate very well, but I think the stuff that's on the website is a little bit more legible. But what I'm going to be doing is taking and going over the top of a portion of the rear of the house, beyond, further back than the center line of the ridge, so it'll be behind the ridge line. So we'll be adding on to the top of the house and then extending about 18 feet beyond that with the same second story kind of scenario. We're expanding slightly from the existing line of the house on the north side, which is this side right here, so that it'll break up the design a little bit and provide a little bit more area over here for cars and things like that. So the demo plan includes taking this area right here. It was a 3rd bedroom, but the previous owner kind of cannibalized it to make a big walk-in closet and a master bath and a 2.5 bath. So this will all be removed. And the wall that exists there right now, which is here, is going to be moved forward to the house just a little bit, and it'll be a new supporting structure upon which it'll be a load-bearing wall for the 2nd story flooring. So the proposed floor plan looks like this. This part of the house is existing. The cross-hatched wall right here is currently a bearing wall, and we're going to go and reinforce that wall and install a foundation stem wall underneath that and support the 2nd story on that side of the addition with that wall. And I don't have the specifics on exactly what that looks like, but that'll be something that will be presented in the engineering drawings when, in fact, we have them. So we're going to put a guest room and a family room there and open up the kitchen so it's you see the family room a little bit, living area there. And then on the 2nd story, the floor plan looks like this. Windows across the front, picture windows. We don't have much 2x2 picture windows because we don't have much room above the ridge line, or that wall isn't very long and very tall, so we'll put some windows in there, and then keeping as the front appearance, although you don't see these windows really well from the street, I don't think, but continuing that, and then the same kind of picture window along there, so it gives it a nice architectural feature across the front of the top of the house. So here are the elevations. This is the existing elevation on the left-hand side and the proposed elevation on the right-hand side. So just commenting on this briefly, this house has kind of long semi-hipped roof, if you will, much longer than I think I've ever seen. And we're going to try to continue that same dimension in terms of the length of that semi-hip on the top portions of the roof and the front, depending upon, you know, how wide, how long the roof span is. So that's kind of what that'll look like there. There isn't any other changes to the front of the house. All of this will be constructed at the same elevation as the existing floor elevation of the home. And all of the exterior features like the height and the height of the doors, the height of the windows, the overall size of the windows will be consistent with what's already there along with the window surrounds. So that's what that looks like. This is the southern elevation, so the existing elevation. And you can see here that the structure on the second floor is well behind the ridge line, as is the extension of the roof there, in the soffit of the roof. And we're keeping the window dimensions here consistent with what's here and out, as well as on top. Okay, so that's the side elevation from the south. Here's the rear elevation. Once again, we're keeping the same dimension with this window as the larger windows that are already in the house, and the side windows that are molded to it will be consistent as well. Same thing here, double French door with some side lights on the back. This is the northern elevation. Once again, you can see consistency.
Excuse me, can you pull that down just a tad?
I'm sorry. Oh, yeah,
It's
sorry,
getting
yeah.
tripped. Yeah, thank you.
Consistency with the window sizes and placements on the wall, as well as some more picture windows right here. Foundation will be a block foundation with brick veneer, and I have some pictures of a similar project I did with that kind of veneer on it, which I can show you if it's of interest to you. Talking about fenestration, I'm going to be using Jeld Siteline windows. The model numbers are not called out on the drawing, and the drawing call out, which is listed on the left-hand side of this page, is a different call out, but the Jeld Siteline product codes are listed, as well as the nominal width and heights, which match the existing windows that are in the house now. That'll be all wood construction. The current windows have, as you saw, grids in the top sash only. It's not the original windows that are in the house use a 5/8 grid, if you will, and the spacing between the center lines of the grids is 6 inches. The front of the house and the sides of the house now actually have a replacement window in there that really isn't architecturally correct. It uses a 7/8 beaded grid, and it's a sash pack. If you're familiar with that, if you use a sash pack, it actually makes the sash much narrower than the original sash in the house. So those lights look a little narrow. So that might be something, if you really want to make this perfect, to change in the future, okay? It'll be finished, and I have an example of what the wall section would look like here with a 5/4 inch thick, 4.25 inch wide trim board. So the siding will abut to that, and I have a feature here that shows you, I have a mock-up of what that actually looks like, okay? These will be, the lights in these windows will be what's called a simulated divided light. This is an example off of Jeld's website of what they look like. Focusing here to document that I'll be using what's called a 5/8 inch putty grid on these windows. And I also showed the sill feature, which you're going to use a 2-inch sill, which is a larger sill. It's more consistent with the existing sills that are on the house now, and just showing how it actually attaches to the front of the sightline window there. So let's talk about exterior features. So I pulled off some of the siding in the rear of the house, and below the siding, you can see the 2.5-inch Dolly Varden siding. Oddly enough, it only had 2 coats of paint on it, which means it must have been, the aluminum siding must have been put on pretty early in its life. And I guess what they did when they did this is they removed the trim boards that were on the side of the house. That shadow line measures about 4.25 inches. So the house must have had the same kind of trim that goes around the windows as corner boards on the house. So I'd be replacing that. And these renderings that you saw actually show those kinds of features there, right? Just another shot of what it looks like. I don't think that's maybe adds too much to the discussion. But the exterior finishes then, so that the siding will be, you know, Dolly Varden clapboard siding, 2.5-inch reveal, if you will. The window surrounds will be, as I stated, 5/4 inch. On the sides, where it's not mold, it'll be 4.25, but in the center, and I just excerpt a couple of examples. Currently, the windows that are molded together that are side by side in the center, they're separated by a 7.25-inch trim board. So I'd be seeking to duplicate that same kind of look with the windows and stuff like that that we'd be adding. Once again, replacing the corner trim with 5/4 by 4.25. The soffit will be exposed rafters, 2x6 rafter tail. This house has fairly long rafter tails. If you measure from the wall to the end of the rafter tail on the existing house in the horizontal direction, it's almost 30 inches. So I'd be seeking to match that in this case. And then the underside of the soffit has this classic kind of beadboard there, so I would be replacing I would be putting this on the underside of the soffit area, okay? So here's the kind of exterior appearance that I'm going for, okay? The finished appearance. This happens to be a house on Rome that a guy, it's not too far from my house, I drive by it all the time, that a guy restored. It's very similar kind of siding and window trim and all that kind of thing. This is kind of the look that I want to try to produce with this house when I'm done with it, which will be a very kind of original look, right? To give you an idea of a home that I did before this is on West Palm Drive. This was a house that was looked kind of like my neighbor's house starting out. The front porch, the second-story addition in the rear was not on there. These windows didn't exist like that, so I did that kind of thing. It has some of the architectural features that I'm talking about here, along with some extra other ones, but this is the kind of look that I'd be trying to produce with mine as well. I took a picture of the rear of that house just to show you the trim board corners, same size, and the French door look that we have at the rear. The brick veneer, this is all brick veneer that you're seeing here, but this is the kind of brick veneer that I would be wanting to do on the exposed portion of the foundation, which isn't going to be more than about 1.5 feet, I don't think. Just more of that. This is one of the neighbors' houses that have done this. This is a good rendition of what my addition will look like in terms of the window surrounds and the rafter tails and things like that, okay? I don't know what the best way to see this. I may be able to put this here, but so I don't know. Can we zoom out? So this is the mock-up that I have, but this is basically the way it'll look. This is the trim board. This is the 2-inch sill, and you can see the reveal that's presented on the side here with the siding abutted to the 5/4 inch or 5/4 inch trim board. So, you know, it's kind of a good look. And then on the bottom of the siding, where it actually meets the bottom of the house, I'd put a 5/4 by 2, which would be an 1.5 inch trim board down there that will have a slight 1/4 inch protrusion below this surface on the bottom of the house, and I would paint that the same color as the siding. So it'll give it you know, it won't just look like the siding ends at the bottom of the house, which isn't the look that I prefer. So that's that, and then, so here are the examples I was going to show you. This is 905 Bruce Street, which is 2 doors to the north of me. It's kind of hard to photograph this because there's a big tree in the front yard, but this is a view from the south, and you can see this whole area has been added on in a very similar way as to what I would be proposing. Here's 904 Bruce, which is across the street and in the same location. And this is a fairly large addition that was done here almost as an accessory structure. That's the third property. And then this is my neighbor's house, and I think she did this about 18 years ago, but that's 911 Bruce Street, and that abuts my property. Okay? Now, just looking at the staff report, I don't really have an example of the hardware, the lighting that I would use, but I'm going to use brass hardware and brass lighting fixtures on this house where they exist. The doors will be wood-clad, either wood-clad aluminum clad doors with the same kind of light design that we'll have in the windows, so that will all match. So I think that, with the exception of a couple of other comments here, which I don't quite understand, but you know, the AC will be shielded from the street via the fence that's already there, so the fence exists now all the way around the house. So that pretty much concludes my presentation. Be happy to answer any questions.
Thank you very much. At this point, staff's going to do their staff report, and then we'll ask questions to the applicant.
Okay.
Thank you.
Good evening, Commissioners. Ron Vila. Staff finds that this application is consistent with the Hyde Park design guidelines. Moving through the conditions that are reflected on the staff report on page 4. The first bullet item is I work with the homeowner to expose the siding underneath. It's always a good position to start to show what the bones of the structure are, so we're not guessing. So he provided us with some documentation and direction, and then to complement the existing contributing structure and moving forward with the addition. He did address the fencing is going to remain, and the fencing will buffer the AC units. The additional items here, as far as the incorporation of a vertical band board on the south elevation, staff no longer has a concern incorporating that. But there is the possibility to break up the massing, that 2-story volume that he has, with the introduction of a belt course. Usually we double the size of, or maybe triple the size of the exposure of the siding that's there now to incorporate that course to soften the massing. The steps were not illustrated on either the site plan or the rear elevation, so that would have to be incorporated. I believe it's just a drafting oversight. And then the possibility of revisiting covers over the pedestrian doors. It's a good architectural detail to watertight the doors from the elements. So additional discussion on that treatment. He did speak about the determination of the siding, how it meets the foundation. And I believe the last item that possibly was an oversight as well is the final roof material. That concludes staff's portion, and I'll be here to answer any questions.
All right. Thank you very much. At this point, we will open the hearing to any public comment, either for or against. Seeing and hearing none, the commissioners are now going to ask questions to the applicant. Commissioner Sutton, would you like to begin?
Yes, sir. I do have one question. You've made a presentation this evening of a number of photographs of adjacent or nearby properties
Yes,
as a point of precedence towards your design efforts. Have those photographs been entered into the record?
they have not.
I believe they ought to be.
I can enter them into the record.
Just for
Just-
Kamaria Pettis-Knuckle for the record from the city attorney's office, the commissioners have seen the photographs, so they are admitted into the record.
Thank you. No further questions this time. Thank you.
May we see your rear elevation, please?
I'm sorry?
Your rear elevation?
Yes.
Okay, and then the west elevation, I believe. Maybe it was the north elevation.
Okay. Should have kept this presentation in order.
It's okay. Okay.
Is that it? Is that the one?
Yes. Mhm. I had a question about the picture windows. You referenced a couple of photos that incorporated more of a similar style as to what was shown on their buildings? Or
Yes.
the existing structures? So the 4-panel window was used in one reference, and then there was one that used a more simplified?
Yes.
So I was wondering which reference you were using for your home?
Which one of the photos I was using, or which one of the,
No, I see the 4 over here.
yeah.
4 here. Which of the references? This is just a point of conversation.
Well, so I referenced this right here.
Mm-hmm. So this is the one when you pulled this up.
Yeah.
Okay, and go ahead and pull the other one.
So, you're right. I mean, I don't know what's behind here, but it's probably a bathroom or something like that where they need to have a shorter window. And these seem to match the size of the other house. If you're referencing that, I mean, there's really,
No. That one's very small.
huh?
The one that you had pointed out is the one that I was thinking. I was just thinking that they were like a little busy because you've got them all stacked together, but I'll leave that for conversation with my fellow commissioners. And then staff had mentioned incorporating a belt course to break up the massing. Has that been considered?
Yeah, I can do that, and I'm not sure exactly where the comment's coming from. If it's this elevation that they're concerned about, where most of you see the large wall and so forth, I'll be happy to do that.
Okay. I don't have any additional questions.
Are there any other additional comments or questions?
Can I please look at your south elevation? Okay, that one's okay. In regards to the comments from staff about providing some type of cover over the doorways where you
Yes.
have those man doors, is there some reconsideration of that on your part as you move forward and refine your
Yes,
design?
certainly there is, and really, it's kind of a little bit of an omission, but yeah, I would plan to put some sort of an extension across the top of this door right here, and I would add that I would also do the same kind of thing across the top of the French doors in the rear, and it would have to be an extension, I don't know how long, but probably at least 3 feet.
So
3-foot
for
extension.
me, when I think about it from a historic perspective, I look to precedent, and typically service doors would have some sort of covering in order to provide for that, so that in that momentary pause between inside, outside, you have some cover.
Right.
So I think that's where the commentary is coming from. When it comes to porches and things like that, that's really, especially something at a rear elevation, I
Yes.
think that's really something where you have to look at the historic precedent and really be comfortable with that move. But I would,
I'm happy to do that.
encourage
and-
that.
And we plan to do that.
Okay. And then in terms of the rear steps, I suppose that's where all these doors are that
Yes,
we've forgotten. Okay, so those are just oversights in terms of drafting,
Yes.
right? Okay. Just wanted to cover that. Other than that, I have no specific questions. Thank you.
thank you.
I believe you mentioned this, so I do apologize if I'm asking. The existing foundation of the house in the photos looks like it's almost non-existent in terms of visually being able to see it. What is the existing sort of above grade to where the bottom of the siding that you can see the existing foundation? And is the new structure going to match, or, because I heard you said it's anywhere between a foot to a foot and a half?
Yeah, so I've crawled under this house, okay? In order to do that, I had to dig about a foot down, okay? So I suspect there's probably about 3 feet no, it's probably about a foot or foot and a half. I can't sneak under there myself without excavating a little bit. But remember that foundation is a pier. Those are all set on piers, right? But this foundation will be more or less a continuous stem wall. So whatever's there, it'd probably be about like this much, will be a brick veneer, right? With some holes for, venting and things like that.
So does the existing house now have any sort of, if it sits on the brick piers, does it have any sort of like a lattice or
No.
screen for the foundation?
No.
Okay.
So I'd like to do that, right?
Okay,
Like,
well, I would say we'll,
need to come upgrade that,
okay, so the new one will have,
yes.
okay. Let's see. The only other question that I had, and you started to mention this, if you could pull up let's do the new site plan, if you wouldn't mind. So I wanted to see if you could real quickly run through again, if we're looking at the existing house and kind of where the north and the southern wall edges are, the south wall kind of either stays in line with that or steps back, but then on the north, it does kind of step beyond the existing wall and protrude out of there so that it's something you can see from the front.
Yes.
Was there any sort of look or conversation about having that to where it didn't protrude beyond that north wall at all?
You're talking about this area right here, right?
Yes, sir.
Yeah, no, there really wasn't. I'd like to widen the house a little bit, and I thought that by having a slight jog in that right there and not extending it all the way up here, presented a better architectural feature from the side of the house, from the northern side of the house, right? Because my neighbor's going to be looking at this, right? So that's kind of what I was thinking. Really need to, since I'm moving this over this way considerably, to make room for, what I need to put here in terms of room for cars and things like that. I needed to try to bump that out a little bit.
Okay. And then, do you have a wall section?
I don't.
Okay. Are there any additional comments or questions from any of the commissioners?
No.
Okay. At this point, the applicant is allowed 5 minutes for a rebuttal.
Well, I'm not sure I have any rebuttals. Happy to take the suggestions made by the council into consideration and incorporate those into the final drawings when I get them done.
Thank you very much. At this point, we will close the public hearing and the commissioners will now begin discussing the case. Would you like to start?
Well, the fact that we don't have any wall sections Typically, by this point, we would expect wall sections to be presented. I think you did a really good job of documenting with photographs, both precedent and the existing conditions that you've been able to uncover. So I appreciate that, and I have a very clear understanding of the intent, but we do have to have some very basic sort of documentation. So I'm a little perplexed that we got this far and no wall sections. Other than that, it's fairly consistent. I understand the intent.
I think the addition of the covers of both the side and rear doors, as well as the belt course and how those sort of tie together or relate to each other, could make a big difference on the massing of this addition and sort of breaking it up.
I actually find the belt course a little awkward for this house because of the style of the original structure. When you look at the two side elevations in relationship to I don't think they'll marry very well. And I think that's forcing something. With the vertical bands, that's why I asked to look at your side elevations again. With the two vertical bands that you've added between the new and the existing, because they are a flush plane from my understanding, I think that does a fairly good job of starting to strike the zone between the existing and the new. And I think trying to add in a horizontal, it just doesn't seem to work very well with
I do think the existing and the new are broken up nicely. I think, and I believe, I think the roof structures sort of relate to each other nicely. I did have a little bit of concern about the window patterns from the front and how they're clustered, and then the pattern.
I'm glad you said that, because that was one thing I did mean to comment on that. You had brought up in your questioning about the sort of picture windows, the smaller windows, whether or not you were going to use the 4-pane or a 1-light, or something that maybe had vertical buttons rather than, a 4-pane, which to me seems to. It wouldn't be the 4-light?
No, it'd be.
The single light?
It would be vertical.
Okay.
Probably 2 vertical grids, which means 3 lights.
Okay. So, but I do agree with my fellow commissioner in that I felt like maybe the quantity could be reduced by 1 and renegotiate the pattern of those windows, especially from the front. I think it's the front elevation that disturbs me, it gives me cause for pause the most, right? Yeah. Okay.
Well, on that front elevation point, we're at a disadvantage because we're looking at this as a very simple elevation drawing. You would never really see it in that fashion. You would see it more of a perspective at some angle as you approach the building from one side of the street or the other. And I could see exactly how that would fit together with some of the precedents that were presented this evening, particularly that house on Palm Avenue, I believe it was, which has the ganged mini windows that you're trying to bring forward on all of this. So I'm not really disturbed at all about those windows, their size and their placement. I think they're all entirely appropriate. I think what he's doing is, if you will, part reinforcing the corner edges of that addition as you see it from various perspectives. The other point, too, is the belt course. I'm not terribly convinced that the belt course is a necessary item on this building addition, simply because that I would be scratching my head right now to determine from where on the original building would such a line spring from. Because unless it has a decent starting point, I don't think it would fit very well. You also have enough precedent shown already, some which do have a belt course and some which do not. So I think you're on the right track here without. I think you're going through a lot of, not a lot of trouble, but enough trouble to make sure that you're citing as a choice for both the renovation and the addition. Meld it together very well, and that's a very, very small, almost as you see on your drawings, almost like a pencil line. That's the kind of shadow effect that you would have. So I think that works out well for the whole, bringing the two together.
I would tend to agree. I think the belt course, because of the northern and southern elevations and how that roof line ties in right now and where you're putting your new two-story addition, it really doesn't seem to be a nice place to add it. So in my mind, I don't think it's needed personally. The wall section, as a commissioner mentioned, I think, yes, it would be nice to see that. I think part of me does feel that because of the detail and some of the explanations that the applicant did present, I tend to feel that I think a lot of those materials that we would typically see on this section have been thought out and how that would tie in. But it would be nice to have that wall section presented so we could see it. So right now, do we need to reopen if we?
Are you, I'm sorry, Kamaria Pettis-Mackel, for the record, are you gonna, or do you want to ask a question of the applicant, or are you ready?
No, so I wasn't going to ask a question. He had just mentioned if he could make a comment.
He wanted to add a comment.
Yes. Okay. So for me, I think some of the door information, hardware, lighting, I think a lot of that stuff can get worked out. The windows placements and layouts, I tend to agree with Commissioner Sutton. I don't know if you would truly see some of those, and some of the examples that were presented do seem to match. I think the biggest question is probably those door overhangs and how does that tie back into the design. It is in the rear, but I think for me that would be a big one.
There's actually one on the side elevation. It's the south, where the kitchen and the new family is.
Yes. Okay, so there's two.
That's the one that I'm actually pointing out. The rear one I'm not so concerned about. That seems to be more of a homeowner desire. But when you see a side door that is especially associated with the kitchen area, that becomes a service door, and historically, those tend to be treated differently.
Okay.
So,
and that's all kind of the comments I have. Does any of the other commissioners have any sort of comments or continuations?
I do not.
I'm going to go back on a particular comment I made earlier for you, sir. When I first saw the drawings for the elevation, my initial impression was, ouch, it's a big addition on a small jewel box sort of a building. But to me, it was your presentation of precedents that really saved the day. I think that made your case very well.
I have no additional comments now.
Okay. Any of my fellow commissioners like to make a motion?
I move to grant a certificate appropriateness for the drawings and documents presented at this public hearing, ARC 20-185, for the property located at 909 South Bruce Street, with the following conditions. The door and hardware, as well as lighting specifications, are approved by staff. Consideration is given to coverings over the side entry door, as well as the window specification being reflected in the drawings. Because based upon the finding of fact, the proposed project is consistent with the Hyde Park design guidelines for the city of Tampa for the following reasons. The scale, height, setback, orientation, and alignment are consistent with the guidelines.
I second that motion.
As the conditions have been stated, do you have any comments or do you approve the conditions?
I approve and I accept those conditions.
All right, thank you. All in favor?
Aye.
Against? All right, motion passes. Thank you.
Commissioners, the next item on our agenda this evening is for ARC 20-246. at 5102 North Branch Avenue. This is an application for a new accessory structure. The property in question is has a contributing building in the Seminole Heights Historic District. Moving to the photos on the overhead here. The first image you see is the 1920 Sanborn map of this part of the Seminole Heights Historic District with the property in question outlined in green. You can see that it's located at the northwest corner of Wilder Avenue and Branch Avenue. You can see the red line a couple of blocks to the west, approximately at Florida Avenue, where the edge of the historic district is, and you can see the subject site's proximity to the Hillsborough High School. So looking at the present-day aerial, you can see those same features here as well. This is Wilder Avenue and Branch Avenue here, Hillsborough High School, and Florida Avenue to the west. So the house faces Branch Avenue. This is a view of it from that street, so we'd be looking west in this picture. You can see that, like many houses in Tampa Heights, it's a bungalow with craftsman features, and there's something that looks like an integrated porte cochere, except it is actually elevated to be on the same level height as the porch. So instead of having a porte cochere, this house has sort of a wraparound porch on that side. And this is not typical, but it is often, I wouldn't say it's often seen, sorry, but it is seen on some other corner properties in the historic district. Let's see, looking at that wraparound porch feature, looking at it from Wilder Avenue there. So, sorry to back up a little bit. Here is the north side of the house. You can see the property, the lot slopes to the rear a bit there. And then moving back around the south side there's that view again. And this would be looking sort of northeast at the house from Wilder. So you can see the back side of the house, and then the alley is located just at the bottom left of the photo here. And then this photo is looking directly straight on at the rear of the house. So we're facing east in this picture. You can see that the house does have a variety of materials. This is an example of the grouped windows on the main house. You can see the skirt that runs below the windows there, and it has the shingles on that portion of the building. There's just the wood siding on the body of the house, and then there's a patterned stucco that is applied to the porch beam and is on the columns for the porch as well. Here again is that shingle siding, and you can see the detail of the lattice in the porch gable there. This is another detail photo. You can see the pattern in the stucco a little bit better there. You can also make out the bracket that's supporting the overhang. It's another nice little detail on that particular house. So this is the property to the north. Here we are on Branch Avenue, just one parcel to the north. There's a house there. It sits at the rear of the property. And then this is looking across Branch at the house that's at the northeast corner of that intersection. And then moving to the southwest corner of that intersection, there's an apartment building here. In this photo, we are looking north along Branch, so the subject site would be to your left. And here we're looking south on Branch, so the subject site would be to your right, and you can see a portion of the Hillsborough High School there, across Wilder. This picture is looking east on Wilder, so that apartment building would be to your right and the subject site to your left. And this would be looking the opposite direction, looking west along Wilder toward Florida Avenue in the distance there. This is a view looking at the property from the alley. There is currently on site an existing shed that's about 10 feet by 10 feet. And then this is a view in the alley. Here we are looking north in the alley. So there's the, just to the right would be your subject property, and then next we have the house that you saw at the very rear of the property just to the north, and the other structures to the, along the property line on the other side of the alley there. And then looking south on the alley toward Wilder, the subject site would be on your left. And at this time, I'll ask the applicant to come forward to make a presentation.
Thank you.
Hello, my name is Joanne Peck.
Hold on, just hold on 1 second.
Better?
Yes, thank you.
Okay. My name is Joanne Peck. I'm with Historic Shed, and I'm the designer and will also be building this. It's an accessory building. It's we're proposing a 2-car detached garage to be located at the rear of the property. Meeting all of the required setbacks. We have a 5-foot setback from the alley, and this would be entered from the street on Wilder with a 10-foot setback from the property line. We really aren't able to situate this so that you can access it from the alley. It's a narrow alley, and there's just not enough room to get the required setbacks. So. So it's a pretty simple garage, pretty standard. We're taking some elements off of the existing house that will be replicated. The siding exposure will be the same as on the main house. You notice there were several different materials, but the upper portion above that water table is all a lap siding, so we would be matching that. The gable vent will do that same lattice work that's on the house. And we will replicate the brackets that have that really nice little corbel at the bottom of the brackets. We're actually building a garage 2 doors down from this property right now that has the same bracket detail. The doors, they will be overhead doors. They're a steel door with a carriage house overlay. We've been using a Wayne Dalton door lately that I like quite a bit. It's got a nice look, and also show some images of that installed. So this says it's the right elevation, but it's also the same as the left elevation. The homeowner does not desire to have any windows on those elevations, certainly none facing the alley side from a security standpoint. And because of the proximity to the house where it's located, there doesn't seem to be really any need for windows there. And then the rear of the property, there would be a pedestrian door. So obviously, you get out of your car, close the garage door, walk into the backyard. And we would do, it would be a steel door as well, or fiberglass, and it's got a mission-style design. I'll show an image. I think I have one of those installed in the project. Also to note, we would be putting the brackets on both the front and the back of the building, and that we are matching the roof slope of the 512 slope. And said it was the same as the other one. Here we go. Right elevation looks the same. Roof would be a dimensional asphalt shingle, the same as what's on the main house. And then just a quickie floor plan. It's a garage. It's a box with 2 doors. And then the wall section, obviously it's a garage, so it will have a concrete slab. We'd be building it with attic trusses. We would have I've got a 1'9" overhang for the sides of the building. Again, lap siding and dimensional shingle roof. And then we always use a 1x6 board sheathing instead of plywood, so that you won't see any nails coming through. To give you some ideas, this is the type of garage door we typically use, and I apologize, but I've got that mission style door. It's a little bit different design that we're going to be using, but you can see it there as well from another project that we had done. And another project just showing you the garage doors so you can get a sense of what they are. I guess the one other item that is relevant from my images is the board sheathing you can see that is typical for the way we build instead of using the plywood. And hopefully I hit all the relevant points, and that concludes my presentation.
Thank you. At this point, staff will present the staff report.
Commissioner, staff finds that this application is consistent with the Seminole Heights Design Guidelines. I have no further comments on it, and I'm available if you have questions. Thank you.
Thank you. At this point, I'll open the public hearing to any public comment. Seeing no one, the commissioners will now begin asking questions. Would anyone like to start?
I have no question.
Do you have a design intent yet for the hardware and the lighting? Did I miss that in your presentation?
I actually do. This is what I'm proposing at the moment.
Okay. And then the hardware for the doors?
Everything would be either a black or a dark bronze.
You don't have an example image of that? Okay. And then in terms of the gable vent, how exactly will you be constructing that? Does that show that clearly on your wall section? I couldn't
It's
read.
not in that wall section.
Okay,
but
so could you tell us how you intend to actually construct that gable vent detail on the garage?
It'll be built out of pressure treated 1x2.
Is it gonna be open behind it, or is it a solid opaque surface
No,
behind?
it'll be an actual vent.
Okay, all right. Thank you, that's it for me.
I don't have any questions.
Could you go to your site plan real quick, please? One of the comments that staff had is, currently it looks like it says remove curb and drive. Staff had mentioned in the staff report that it should be changed to sink existing granite in place. Is that the intention, or?
That is the discussion we had with transportation. My guys are already moaning about how we're going to actually dig that out and lift it and then resink it, but that is what we've been told we need to do, so that's what we're gonna do.
Okay. And then, just to have the conversation, I understand the owner doesn't want to have a window placed on the eastern side. If there was a window put in, have you guys discussed possibly where that would be and kind of the size of the window, or has it been very firm of no window at all?
His preference is no window.
Okay. Any other questions from commissioners?
Not for me.
No.
Okay. At this point, the applicant is allowed 5 minutes for a rebuttal.
I'm good.
All right, thank you very much. We're going to be closing this portion of the public hearing, and now the commissioners will discuss the case.
I have no comment.
I also have no comment.
No comment.
I think the only real big things is making sure the note on the site plan for the curb is corrected, and then just the some of the existing materials and samples. Otherwise, I have no additional comments as well. Would one of the commissioners like to make a motion?
I move to grant a certificate of appropriateness for the drawings and documents presented at this public hearing, ARC 20-246, for the property located at 5102 North Branch Avenue, for the following, with the following conditions: that the existing granite is noted to sink existing granite in place, and that the hardware is approved by staff. Because based upon the finding of fact, the proposed project is consistent with the Seminole Heights design guidelines for the city of Tampa for the following reasons: that the scale, alignment, and setback is consistent with the guidelines.
I second the motion.
Do you have any questions on the conditions, or do you approve? Okay. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Against? Motion passes. Thank you.
Good evening, Commissioners. Ron Vila, staff with Historic Preservation. And the last case that we have this evening is ARC 20-251. This is for the address of 1813 West Watrous Avenue. This is in the Hyde Park Historic District. The primary structure is a circa 1920 contributing structure. It's a high-end structure. As I go through the photos, you'll see the materials that are incorporated into this structure. The request is for new construction for an accessory structure, which is approximately 760 square feet. Starting with the Sanborn map. This is Watrous. Primary structure faces Watrous. There is an alley that runs to the rear of it, and you see a wraparound porch on the footprint of the Sanborn, and then the accessory structure to the rear. This is looking from above. This is the primary structure. This is a non-contributing automobile storage / shed building. Once again, you have Watrous, you have the alley, you have Albany to the west, and you have Fremont to the east. This is a historic photo that we have in our archives. You see the rock that was incorporated into the structure, the screened-in porch portion of it. Today, I'll show you another photo that the screening comes all the way here. Then you see the shake shingles above. There's some casement windows, period casement windows that are still there today, and then the lap siding. Try to get the same angle. This was from the early 20s, and then how it exists today. As I indicated, the screen porch terminated here, and now they brought it all the way forward. This is a side shot, and this is looking from the street from Watrous, looking at the front facade. This is looking through the apron, down the ribbon drive to the rear. As you get to the rear, this is the structure that's currently there that will be removed as part of this request. And just showing the rear elevation of the primary structure. This house has been well maintained. Here you have an operable gable vent. You see the shake shingles in the gable end. These are period windows, probably the original windows. You see the knuckles on the side and how it dies into the banding. This is a closer shot of the shadowing of the shingles. It's a knee bracket on the primary structure. The underside of the overhang. This is one of the columns. Moving around to the surrounding properties from the primary street. Some additional contributing period structures. Some are multifamily, so the incorporation of different styles of homes. This is looking from the alley at the rear non-contributing structure. And just a series of shots down the alley to show newer construction and the massing off the alley. These have all come and been reviewed by this board. And then to conclude, you have this one here. At this time, Ms. Peck will address the board.
Thank you.
Hi, Joanne Peck again from Historic Shed. That is one of my favorite houses. I think it's a lot of people's favorite houses in Hyde Park with that stone. What we're proposing here is a detached two-story accessory building, 16 by 24 feet. We had originally designed it so that it would be an actual garage on the first floor, and then there was some conversation with the homeowners. They did not want a garage. That wasn't really what they wanted. They thought they had to have a garage. So what I'm presenting today is just going to be storage on the first floor, and I'll go over some of that as we go on. They have adequate parking on site. You can see the room for 2 cars with the existing ribbon drive. So this structure would be placed in the back. It is 4 foot from the side property line, and they have asked to put it 10 foot from the rear of the property. And that's for a couple of reasons, not for vehicular access, but so that because there's an overhang on the back that we're proposing. Don't want the garbage trucks to knock it over, or anybody coming down the alley. Plus, there's kind of a staging room for your garbage cans to be, a place where you take your bikes out, you know, and just have a little bit more room from the alley. So I know it's a little, most people seem to like to place their buildings as far to the setbacks as possible, but the homeowner here has not requested that. So much like the last one I had, it ends up where the front and the back elevations are very, very similar. In this case, we are proposing, as I said, a 2-story building. It would have lap siding that would be the same exposure as on the main house, and we would do shingles in the gable end, just on this end. And I know that the hatch pattern on this shows them as a regular pattern, but we would do the staggered pattern that would make sure that it matches what's on the main house. Lazy drafting on my part. A 512 roof pitch to match the main house, brackets on the eaves, and in the main house there is no center bracket in the gable end, so we just are proposing 2 brackets, one on either side. Pair of double hung windows, centered, very symmetrical, easy elevation, and then we're doing a pair of 3-foot doors, so it's a 6-foot wide opening, and then it would have an overhang over the doors. We have exterior stairs. They'd be wood, just a simple 2x2 railing and 4x4 posts on the stairs. This is the elevation that would be facing the yard, and you can see where the stairs are. They come up, they turn, and then at the top we would have a door that's a mission-style fiberglass door. And then there would be a pedestrian door at the lower level leading into the yard. And then we'd have those overhangs. You can see on the sides how those would look, both on the front and the rear of the elevations. And there you go, is the rear elevation, very similar to the front. We did make it simpler. I did not put the shingles in the gable end. I didn't think it was necessary on the alley side of this. But otherwise, it has the same windows and the same door configuration. And then we have the elevation that is facing the neighbors, and it's just got two simple small windows. One is at, I think it's just in the living space. They didn't really want to be overlooking the neighbors. I believe there's a two-story building right there that it would be facing on the neighbor's property. First floor plan. As I said, they want it for storage. At some point, they want the option, if they put in a pool, of this actually being more of a pool cabana and it be subdivided, so you would have both the storage area and then whatever the pool cabana might be finished out with, and that's why there are the doors at both ends. Here is the floor plan for the second floor level, and so you can see why there's not additional windows on this elevation on the second floor. And as I said, I think it just looks at the neighbor's accessory structure anyway. Wall section, pretty self-explanatory. Even though it's not a garage, it will be on a concrete slab, so it's going to have that kind of a look like it might have been a garage that was converted at some point. Siding, water table, and then the same other details that we had from the other, where it has the board sheathing. And in this case, we were going with a 2-foot overhang. So the images I showed before are pretty similar, but just so you see, this is a property, an accessory building that we built pretty nearby, and that has a lot of the same details. This one had a lower roof slope, but you can see the same water table detail, brackets, the same door that we would be using for the garage door, and same window configuration. There's another image of that. So the windows that we use typically are a Jeld wood window. I believe they're going to have to be impact, which may impact the number of windows they want to choose in the end, but at the moment, that's what we're going with. They're an all-wood window. We've used them on several other projects nearby. So this happens to actually be the next door neighbor's property that we did a renovation on, and again, it has the similar mission style door. We would have one that has just the 3 lights instead of the 6 lights in the opening, and we've now found a supplier with a flush glaze, so it doesn't have that kind of awful surround around the windows. Sometimes you gotta do what you gotta do. I think once again I hit everything, so I will conclude my presentation.
Thank you.
Commissioners, Ron Velo, staff with the preservation. Staff finds this application is consistent with the Hyde Park design guidelines. A couple of items to discuss. I think the first thing that kind of jumps out at you is how watered down this is to the primary structure, which would not be out of character. The secondary structure a lot of times would not have the details of the primary structure. So that would not be uncommon. Sometimes it does take all the cues from the primary structure, but it would not be out of line. The plans that I reviewed, there was no windows on the right elevation as it was listed. Today that was presented, there were 2 windows on that elevation to kind of to break that up. The illustration that was shown this evening, the paired windows on the front were not drawn properly with the mall bar in between. They looked like they were 2 separate windows, so that mall is a solid mall that is a wider appearance than the 2 vertical members to allow for the introduction of the weight pockets. And I understand that you know, these windows don't have the weight pockets, but that was for the larger dimension. that you see that's incorporated. And then lastly, on the plans, it said optional shingles. So what was presented today was that they had the shingles on the front elevation that faces Watrous, and there were no shingles on the back. So maybe further discussion if they need to be incorporated or not. I'll be here to answer any questions. Thank you.
Thank you. At this point, we'll open the hearing to any public comment. Seeing and hearing none, we'll now move to where commissioners can be asking questions. Anyone like to begin?
I would like to open a question, please, directed to staff. Ron?
Yes.
In this presentation, you went through a number of different photographs of the existing building. One in particular, which is a photograph of the rear of the existing dwelling. Could you pop that back up again, please?
Give me a minute, please.
Thank you. So please correct me if I'm wrong on this. The way I read this photograph, which is not as sharp as some of the others that we've seen this evening, the gable end on that second story airplane portion of this bungalow does not seem to have the same kind of shake work that is done on seen on the front of the building. Is that correct?
That's an accurate statement, yes, sir.
So for me, and I'm addressing you as the designer then, you're following through in pretty much the same vein for your addition, for your accessory structure, where you have the shake work on the front and the plain clapboard on the back.
Yes.
Thank you.
I have a question for staff, real quick, about the shingles. Since it's noted on the plans as optional, do we need to specify if those should be on or included or not?
I think you could provide her direction tonight to see what the pleasure of the board is, if that's something that you want to see on the drawings or if it's acceptable as presented.
I'm sorry, can you clarify? Does it actually say optional? I didn't note that it said
Yeah,
optional
it
still.
does say that.
Okay, all right. And do you have examples of the hardware or lighting for this particular structure, property,
I have not gone over lighting with the customer.
or the hardware?
Um,
Okay.
Well, for the doors, and I should have brought this up for the other, but there is a black hardware. It's kind of a faux hinge
Okay,
that's black.
consistent with the mission and carriage
Yeah.
styling. Okay, thank you.
Commissioner Boyd, any questions?
I don't have any questions.
Could we look at your site plan real quick? I have a question for you about the AC unit.
Under the stairs.
Okay. One of the questions that I had, so right now on the site plan, as I read it, it mentions, and we either zoom out or just maybe adjust it so we could see. Okay. So it says future fence with gate.
Yes. the-
So is that area right now fully open from the street view?
Yes. I believe there's a fence across the back. Ron might have it in the photos. But they would be reconfiguring that as part of this project. It'll go get staff approval once they decide what they want to do.
Okay,
But yeah, right now you can see all the way down to that
okay.
existing accessory building.
And then, does the client have an opinion on having the shingles on the front versus not having it? Or,
We really haven't discussed it. I showed them the drawings with that, and
okay,
it wasn't something they said yay or nay to.
okay. I have no additional further questions. Any Other questions? Okay. At this point, the applicant is allowed 5 minutes for rebuttal.
I'm good.
All right, thank you. We'll be closing this portion of the public hearing, and the commissioners can now discuss the case. Does anyone like to begin or have anything to discuss?
Since I brought it up, I really don't have a problem with the gable ends of this accessory structure, front being different than the rear, considering that it follows through in exactly, well, not exactly, but close enough condition as the existing structure. So I think that's a good interplay. I like that.
Okay.
There are some details from the main house that might have been nice to have included. I don't have any objection to the presentation, but like the sill under the window, how it's narrow and wraps as opposed to the thicker belt wrapping. That's sort of just a detail to marry it to the house. I'm not opposed to what was proposed. That's all.
Any additional comments?
I have none.
Okay. Is there, was there any concerns about the front or the windows on the front, based off of what staff asked or mentioned?
I have no issues with those.
Okay. That's it. Then would a commissioner like to make a motion?
I move to grant a certificate of appropriateness for the drawings and documents presented at this public hearing in ARC 20-251 for the property located at 1813 West Watrous Avenue with the following conditions: that the shingles be included on the front gable, lighting and hardware specifications be approved with staff, as well as the location of the new fence and gate is approved with staff. Because based upon the finding of fact, the proposed project is consistent with the Hyde Park design guidelines of the City of Tampa for the following reasons: the facade proportions and window patterns, the alignment and setback are consistent with the guidelines.
I second that motion.
Do you approve the conditions or have any questions about the conditions as they were stated?
I'm good.
Thank you. All in favor?
Aye.
Against? Motion passes. Thank you.
Thank you.
Meeting is adjourned.